Welcome to JustWannaQuilt, a research podcast coming out of Tulane University Law School, where we explore all kinds of things, stories about quilting, tools, field trips, maybe some famous quilters stop by, and, of course, a little bit of copyright thrown in just for fun. This is Elizabeth Townsend Guard, your host, and I'm a law professor at Tulane University Law School and a faculty fellow at the A.B. Friedman School of Business at Tulane. And I just want to quilt. So today we talk to Darci Read. She's part of our quilting army. She is also she's Field Trip Studios, and she talks about her longarm business and her adventures in quilting.
My name is Darci Read, and I'm calling from St. Paul, Minnesota.
Awesome. Is it colder?
Yeah, it's cold.
It's
I mean, there's no snow, so I guess it's okay if it's cold for me.
Got it. It's cold here, but only in our house because we don't have heat yet. So it's not. So we're like bundled up like ridiculous people. But we'll get heat this week. So, okay. So tell me your first memory of someone sewing or quilting in your life.
Sure. I think it was probably my mom had this sewing machine that she rarely used, but she had this desk with one of those typewriter things that you could pull up. Do you remember those? And it would kind of have a spring that you'd put your typewriter on it.
Yeah, I do.
She put her sewing machine on it and then sewed a little curtain for the sewing machine to sit. Oh. So that was my first memory, I think. And of course we had to take home ec in middle school. And I made the pillow. And
did you like it? Because there's some people that are saying we should bring home ec back because people learn to sew there. But it's a mixed thing. Did you enjoy home ec? Did it?
You know, I was actually really jealous of the boys who got to be in wood shop at the same time. So it was like a girl-boy thing at that point. Mm-hmm. And, I mean, if it was co-ed, for sure. And we could both do both.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I mean, I had fun. I love all those things anyway. So I grew up in kind of my family, my grandpa's from Lebanon, and my family is very like traditional kind of immigrant style family where everybody cooks and eats and talks together all the time.
Yeah.
It was normal to me. A lot of the kids didn't have that kind of background, so it was weird to them.
Interesting.
Anyway, that was a long foray about why I liked home ec. Yeah.
And then did you keep sewing once you were in home ec?
Not at all. Well, yeah, I didn't sew again until I think 2009 or 10. And I had moved to New York City, and my sister was having a baby, and I wanted to make her something because I had no money and thought naively that, I could just make something and it'll be great and cheap. And then I walked into a quilt shop and took a class, and
which is already like more expensive than if you just go buy something.
Well, I think the class was like $35. Actually, it was like kind of ridiculously cheap.
Oh, that's great.
And it was a couple nights in Midtown Manhattan. And this lady who was like super into Dear Jane quilts.
Oh, interesting.
By hand, so it was a hand sewing class.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, it was really great. And I made this quilt. It was really kind of terrible looking for my niece. And, I just picked colors that I liked. And I didn't think about the whole composition of the quilt. So every block is some different crazy thing. And it's really funny. But anyway, after that, I got hooked and I've been sewing ever since. And my stash is now a studio that I rent outside of my house.
Oh, really? You do? And you don't live in New York anymore. You live in the Bay Area. Is that right?
I moved to Minneapolis, where I'm from, after New York, and then we moved to the Bay Area, where I've been for the last 5 years. Now we had a baby about a year ago, and we moved back to St. Paul, where I grew up.
Oh, wow. That's really cool. Those are big moves.
Yeah.
That's
we
really
couldn't
interesting.
jump in with all 2 feet, my husband and I, so.
Yeah.
We have the Wanderlust, and he works in web development, and I was working in advertising. So kind of the nature of the gig is to go where the jobs are.
Yeah.
Jump around. So that's what we were doing.
And Minneapolis is working, I'm sorry, St. Paul, right?
Yep.
Yeah. And St. Paul allows you to do that too. That's really cool.
Yeah.
Well, it seems like, I don't know, I grew up where were you in the Bay Area?
We were in El Cerrito, just north of Berkeley.
Oh, and I don't know. I grew up in San Jose, and it just changed so much, and it's so crowded, and it's so impossible to get around. It's just, I don't know.
Yeah, it really changed in the 5 years that we were there even. I mean, yeah, the traffic just seemed to get crazier, and, with the wildfires and the smoke and just a ton of people coming in, it felt, with a baby especially, it just really felt unsustainable to us. I decided to not go back to work after he was born.
Uh-huh.
And, with one income and a house and the rent being insane out there, we just couldn't.
Yeah, it's insane. Yeah, no, I get it. I don't know how people live there now. It's just really weird. And when we lived there, it was like this cute, sweet place. And now it's just like insanity. Yeah, it's weird.
Yeah. My commute, I was working at an ad agency in the city, and my commute was like 3 hours a day.
That's insane. That's like completely insane. Were you driving it, or were you in a
I took the part at first, but then I just got so sick of that. I just bought a car.
You bought a car because you came from New York. That is so funny. Yeah, but that's like such wasted time.
Yeah,
it's like,
was.
I don't know about you, but it's exhausting, right?
It was completely exhausting. I was sick. I was just not happy. And then we got pregnant after many, many years of trying and had the baby.
That's so big, right? And if you we had trouble with that. We had a lot of trouble getting pregnant. I mean, we had a lot of trouble with baby land. And once the baby was here, it was like, that's all. I'm like, that's all I care about. Like, it took us so long to get to the baby. Like, why would I want to just, I don't know.
Yeah. So, we didn't really think about the baby part after either.
We didn't either. Was it weird? It was
and then you're like, oh my God, they don't tell you how insane this is going to be.
I know. We had a really hard pregnancy, and so we were exhausted. We were like, God, we got to the baby part. But then it was like, oh, no, the baby is really exhausting. It's not good.
Yeah. I was in the hospital twice, and then I was in the hospital after he was born for a week because of me, not him. He was totally fine. But, it was just insane. I remember my mom was coming out to help us every few weeks, and she was in the bathroom at 3 a.m, just sobbing on the toilet, like, I can't do this.
Totally. My mother-in-law came out when Sid was born, and she's like, oh, well, I'm going to help you. I'll be here for 5 weeks, which we were so relieved about. Yeah. But we all looked up the first week, and we were like, hey, I think we're supposed to wash the baby. It was a sense of this is not going well at all. We're like, yeah, babies are supposed to be washed, right? It's like, there's 3 adults here, one that has a lot of experience, and we still can't quite figure out what we're supposed to be doing. It wasn't a good moment. I attribute the fact that she refuses to take baths for the rest of her life to the fact that she didn't get bathed the first week. So I don't know. Ridiculous. So back to quilting. So you were in the Bay Area, and now you're in, and you rented a studio outside of your house now?
Yes.
Tell me why.
Well, we moved back when Freddie, my son, was 4 months old, and we didn't have a plan here. My mom said we could live with her, so we did. We put all our stuff in storage, and I just needed to sew. So I was like, how can I do this? And we were going to set it up. I have a longarm, which was in my house in California, and we were going to set it up in her basement. And then we were just out driving around one day, and I drove past a studio space that I'd always liked, and it was for rent. So I called and kind of went down this process of learning about commercial real estate.
Yeah.
And all that, what that entails. And we got pretty far in the process with this one space that I really liked. But then the landlord turned out to be kind of insane.
That's always terrible.
Yeah, it was kind of terrible. And my brother is really into commercial real estate, so he was helping me out, and he was like, you gotta walk away from this. So I did, and then we found another space. I kind of had the bug at that point. I was like, I want to do this,
Yeah.
my dream is kind of to do this as a career. I mean, I know I'm not going to make any money or whatever, but I couldn't imagine going back to advertising, and I wanted to do this. So just a few blocks down the road, I found another space. And I'm in this place called Block Studios. And the woman next door is the owner, and she has a photography studio, and she also rents it out to other creative entrepreneurs. She does a lot of bridal photography, so she's got florists and caterers and all kinds of people that will use her space. And then I'm next door with my long arm and some tables and quilts and all kinds of stuff.
That's really interesting. And then, so Block Studios, I'm looking at, okay, cool. Really interesting. And how much, I mean, are you trying to cover the rent? Like, that was always my worry about, like, renting a studio is, like, are you just, like, hoping to cover the rent, or it's reasonable, or is it your long arm business able to cover the rent? Like, what is the economics behind the studio?
Yeah, well, right now, there isn't really any. Yeah. But right now, I'm trying to cover the rent with the long arm business. And been kind of, I just moved here and we set it up. I probably set up in July. And my business wasn't really anything other than personal in California, because a week after I bought the long arm, I found out I was pregnant.
That's craziness.
So yeah, I mean, it was great, and it was in my house, and I could use it. But like I said, I had a really tough pregnancy. After a few months, I couldn't even fit behind it in my house where it was, and so yeah, everything happened at once in my life.
That's craziness. Now, what kind of long arm do you have?
I have a handy quilter. Fusion.
And how do you like it?
Well, I started on a gammal. There's a studio in Berkeley that I was renting time on. Fox's studio out there, and I learned on a gammal that was like ancient and didn't have a stitch regulator and was like a machine, right? So going from that to the handy quilter has been really great, because the handy quilter is so smooth and easy to push around. But I hit a ruler a couple of weeks ago and messed up my needle plate.
Interesting. Really?
Yeah, I just found that out today. I talked to another handy quilter tech, and so I've got a new needle plate on the way, and hopefully that will solve all my problems.
Interesting. Well, I really I'm looking at your you have two websites you've got, and we'll talk about that. But the field trip quilting, is that what it's called?
Yes.
Yeah, field trip quilting. And so what I really like about your style is it's got a kind of very whimsical, kind of modern style to it, and it's really cool. Like, I really like your quilting a lot. I love it, actually, because it's just got a kind of, like, it's just cool. So do you think that you're going to sort of market yourself to people that want a more modern look on their quilting, for their quilting?
That's what I'm trying to do. Mostly because I'm not really good at the traditional stuff yet.
Yeah, I mean, it's so funny because, like, the traditional stuff is hard and all that stuff, but I also just like the look of what you're doing, I mean, I think that, like, I don't know, I just think it's for me, it appeals to me. I like the kind of, I don't know, I like the more modern, sure, feathers are good, and I now know how to do a feather, but it doesn't personally appeal to me as much as the more modern stuff. So how are you going to go about, since you have a marketing background, how are you going to go about building your business?
Well, so far it's just been a lot of social media and website pushing. So I started out as Darci Sews on that blog.
Yeah.
As just kind of starting a blog, because I went in the East Bay. We had this group called the East Bay Modern Quilters. And I showed up to the meeting like the first week I moved to the Bay Area. I was like, this is awesome. They're going to be cool. I walked in. I brought my little quilt that I had like made from a pattern. And I walk into this group, and it's like everybody is not using patterns. They're all doing this improv stuff. There's famous quilters and people who are have their own fabric lines. And I'm just like,
yeah, it's like a thing. Like the East, right. They're like a thing.
Yeah, they are a thing. But anyway, they're the ones who then I learned from. And so when I started doing the quilting, I was like, well, what can I do that's different from what I'm seeing? And I'm seeing a lot of either really traditional stuff, or I'm seeing with the modern crowd really like tons of matchstick quilting and straight, evenly spaced lines, and that didn't appeal to me either, because I don't like to measure things. I don't like to rulers at all.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, that's good because okay.
So I just kind of started with this. I call it like an organic modern line, and what can I do with that, and how can I make it different each time? So that's where I'm headed, and hopefully other people will like that and want to hire me to quilt their quilts.
Yeah, no, it's really cool. I really like your stuff. Okay, so tell me the difference between the Darci sews, Darci, DARCI sews.com and the Field Trip Quilting. And how did you get to that name of Field Trip Quilting?
So Darci Sews was this blog, and I'm a really bad blogger because partly because when you're doing this for your job and working in marketing and
I know.
People's blogs and everything, and you just don't want to go home and write a blog post.
No, totally. So, Cheryl Sloboda has the 31-day blog challenge in December where you're supposed to write every single day. And her thing is like, if you can write every day in December, you can write all the time. Yeah. And I fail at. I'm going to try it again. I did it for 3 days, and the third day I explained why I hated blogging and stopped. But I mean, I think that it's also because when you do it for like part of your job, it's just like, I don't know, but I'm going to try again. But
part of it to me too really made me think about like why I was doing it and what I was trying to copy. Like, you see all these bloggers in this space right now who are either giving you tutorials, and it's really, to make a good tutorial, it's intense. Like, you have to have and a good idea and all this stuff. And I'm like, well, I don't really want to get into that. I don't want to do like free patterns. I don't want to, like, why am I doing this?
Yeah. And why are you doing it? I am having, after Houston, I'm kind of having a crisis of like, who am I? Like, we just worked really hard for more than 12 days. And like, who am I? Do you feel that way too? Like, who are you exactly?
All the time, especially with 2 domains now that I have to figure out who am I. So I recently decided to open the space to classes at the studio. And so we're going to start doing classes in January. And so that made me think like, okay, I need a better website. So basically what we did to get fieldtrip.com up and running, fieldtripquilting.com. There's another fieldtrip.com, which is a whole other story, which made me think about copyright and you. But
what is fieldtrip.com? Fieldtrip Quilting is great.
I was just kind of sitting around thinking of names, and I'm a creative in advertising. That's what we do. We just make a list of things. And so Field Trip sounded right to me. And it's kind of a joke because Minneapolis and St. Paul are like across the river from each other. Literally, there's like maybe 30 feet where there's a river, and then the cities are on either side. And so, but people in Minneapolis think it's like super far to come to St. Paul. Why would anybody go over there? I have friends that call it Shelbyville. Over in it's like really. So Field Trip is kind of a play on that. Like,
that's
you
funny.
You gotta take a field trip.
That's funny.
Yeah. So anyway, we were talking about like why the blog and why the site and who I am. Is that I lost my track of thought?
Yeah.
So anyway, I've been redesigning fieldtripsquilting.com to have kind of a better flow, and I decided to put my old blog posts onto fieldtripquilting.com, which will be launched hopefully over the weekend, and help. I mean, the point of that would be to help the SEO of the new site to get out.
Do you think that the blogging helps the SEO because it adds more content to your site?
Right. Exactly. And Google.
Are you concerned with like trying to get you have a newsletter? Like, how much is like can you just blog? So this is the other weird thing. I always feel really weird. Like, I'm blogging into like nothing. Like, you know what I mean? Like, who's reading this blog if I blog? Do you worry about sort of audience for the blog, or you don't care?
I do. I think that's part of the reason why I wasn't that interested in it, and it kind of died at darcisews.com. I mean, I posted about a few big things that would happen to me, and I posted when I had this quilt that kind of took off, and I made a pattern really quick. But other than that, I love to talk to people, and that's why Instagram and Facebook have been so much better for me at that, because it's about the community, and if I'm blogging, I'm just like shooting it out into the ether.
It feels that way, right? It just feels like you're like, I don't know. I mean, I think I am going to start blogging because I'm writing the copyright book, and so it's a way to sort of start to get some of that, test that material before it gets into the book proper. But yeah, it feels really weird. Now, how do you use Facebook versus Instagram?
Well, right now I have a Facebook page set up for both Darci Sews and Field Trip Quilting. But lately I've just been kind of joining because I'm new to the area.
Yeah.
And so I've been joining Facebook groups of quilters and talking to them.
Yeah.
So Instagram tends to be more of what I'm working on or what I find inspiring, or lately my personal Instagram is my kid.
That's nice.
Which nice. I also have been struggling with, like how do you balance, like I should probably stop posting him online because he's going to be a little person soon, and
right
ask why I posted all his pictures online.
Right. Now, do you use his name at all, or do you keep it?
I do use his name, and there's all parts of the spectrum on this, but I just feel
I know.
People who know me are going to see it anyway. And honestly, it started because when we were living in California, we were, thousands of miles away from family.
Yeah.
It was a way to connect.
And it's kind of weird. It's so funny because mine was born in 2003. So we didn't really have this kind of, and we were living in London for part of, we were like all kind of off the map in many ways. And, I think it'd be really hard not to post pictures now if your kid was born in 2018, because it's just an expectation that you're sharing the life of the baby. So I don't know. It's interesting, isn't it?
I listen to this other podcast a lot called Terrible Thanks for Asking.
Uh-huh.
And she's talked about this on her podcast too, Nora McInerney, about how she posts and her kid, and my life is online right now. I have friends online that I feel like are closer and I've never met them.
Yeah, no, I totally get that. I agree. I mean, this project has done that for me in many ways, where we met people for the first time at Houston, and it was like, you're my dear old friend, but I haven't met you. So it's really strange.
Right.
And quite loving and lovely,
The quilting community can be so warm in that way. But it's funny because there's a disconnect with the guild sometimes. You'll go to a guild meeting and it'll be the coldest place you've ever seen. Yeah. And there's a lot of quilt police there, and there's, opinions and rules, and sometimes.
Yeah, we're not about that. I mean, it's kind of like, I feel like at least the space that I'm hoping that we are creating is just a space of fun and kindness and no obligation, because like that's the rest of life, right? Like quilting shouldn't have any of that, because like
I'm curious to see where the traditional guild ends up, because I think there's a big disconnect between what's happening in the modern quilting, and I say modern quilting not being like the Modern Quilt Guild, but just people of the modern times, and the traditional quilter that kind of came out of the 60s and 70s who are in the guilds now. It's different.
It's different.
People that I see who are in my age group quilting are much different demographically than the older quilt guild guard, I guess.
Yeah. So interesting, right? Yeah. And they're all stressed about like their membership is growing old and how to attract new people. And I don't know, it'll be interesting to see if it just morphs into something else. So I don't know.
They do have a problem because, they're not attracting, they're certainly not attracting young people of color, and they're not attracting younger people in the numbers that they need to.
Yeah. And the question is, do they need to? I mean, that's the part that I find so interesting, is like, maybe that's just not, it's okay if it's not young, that's okay. But I don't know. It's interesting.
Like, why do we need to do any of this?
Exactly. Really. It's really weird. Like, there's a kind of frantic of, I don't know, it's really interesting.
It is funny. I mean, I've been kind of thinking about that a lot lately because of all this. Well, first, the California wildfires just brought back, when we first brought our son home, the Sonoma fire had just happened.
Mm-hmm.
And so we couldn't leave the house for like a month, and we had this tiny newborn, and the air was just insane, like smoke everywhere.
That's really stressful.
It was. And then the campfire has just been, it's bringing back all those memories and those people who lost all their
everything.
It's terrible, and we don't know the scope of it yet. And so
yeah,
I've been feeling a little helpless here in Minnesota because I know that money is probably what they need, but we're broke.
Yeah.
So anyway, I looked around here, and there's been a group of homeless Native American, primarily people who are basically living in a tent city in Minneapolis.
Oh my gosh, that sounds dreadful. Like that just sounds so cold.
Yeah, so they're and they had a fire a couple days ago actually, and they're calling for supplies and blankets. And I thought, there are all these quilters who make quilts to put in their shelves in their closets. So let's get them out. Let's get out the quilt tops that you haven't finished. I'll finish them up. I've got a ton of backing and batting, and let's bring them over there. So a couple days ago, I just kind of threw it out on the internet. And so far I've got like 5 quilts come in, and somebody's
really
bringing
cool.
blankets today. And
that's really great. Did you put it on the JustWannaQuilt site too?
I haven't yet, but I will.
You should, yeah, because I bet people would mail stuff to you, and I'm happy to mail something to you too. I'll have to see what I have. So, but
awesome.
That's really great. I don't know. I mean, the giving and the community of like giving is amazing with quilting. I mean, it really is.
It is. It's the thing that I find like hard to balance sometimes. Like in my really selfish times, I'll be like, well, I'm making this quilt. I need to get paid for my time, and I need to get paid fairly. And then on the other side of the table, I'm like, let's just give it away.
Yeah, I know.
Nobody under it. Give it to somebody who needs it.
Yeah. It's funny because we had thought about with the booth of like selling quilts, but then when they came in, they were like, I can't sell these. These are too beautiful. They're just like, that's not happening. Like they cannot pay me enough money to put these up for sale. So, but then giving them, it seems okay to me. I mean, I know people sell quilts, so I'm not saying don't sell quilts, but there is this moment of like, they're too precious. They're too amazing. But giving them away seems okay too. Like there's a funny, I don't know why. I don't want to commodify them. I don't know.
I hear you. I mean, it's just different paths, right?
Totally. And I'm totally cool with people who do want to commodify and sell quilts. And I think like the people who are making money, the ones that are doing the best right now are the long armors, because there's a need out there and there's a skill, and you do seem to be able to earn a living doing that. And whether it's free motion or computer, or both, it seems like that is one of the places that people can actually earn money, which is really interesting. But I don't know. We're in the business side of it, so it would be really fun for you to play with us on that side and think through like what it is we need exactly and how we're helpful. Because it's not really about, I don't know, it's just about kind of trying to understand how you do grow brands and how you can help people grow their own brand. So,
totally.
So yeah, that's what we're thinking about. All right. So what are you sewing? Are you sewing today? How often do you go to your studio, and how does that work? Do you have like babysitters? Do you bring the kid with you? Like,
I can't bring him with because right now he's into everything, and he would destroy it in like 1 minute.
Mm-hmm.
So I live about 10 blocks away from the studio, and my mom lives
nice.
5 blocks away. So I drop him off at my mom's house for
that's really nice.
5 hours a day. And usually I get here like 3 to 4 times a week.
That's really great.
It is.
That's
I mean,
huge,
that's the whole reason why we moved back to Minnesota, because
you get grandma time, and also you get your own space, which is really important when you have a little one, because you love them a little bit more if you can spend a few hours away.
Yes. And she just retired this year, so it kind of worked out perfectly.
That's really nice.
he was looking for something to do, and I said, hey, here's a baby.
Yeah, babies are good. And that's really important. I mean, grandma time is really important. It's so important. Or any kind of, other person time.
Yeah.
It's super important. And that's great.
I couldn't imagine. I grew up with a family. I have, 20 first cousins and uncles. And
that's really cool. Are they all in the area that you're back? Are they, will your kid grow up with them?
Oh, yeah. Everybody, well, except for my sister lives in Maine right now, and my other cousin lives in Duluth, but she comes down all the time. So basically we're all within maybe a mile of each other.
Very cool.
Nobody leaves. I was the farthest away for a long time in California, and they were like,
they must be so happy you're back.
Oh gosh. Yeah. It was kind of bittersweet though. My grandpa, who was kind of the patriarch of the family and who my son is named after, died just a week before our flight home.
Oh.
So it's been kind of a difficult transition back with all kinds of things, but at the same time, it's been really good. So he knew we were coming back, which was the most important part, that he knew we were leaving California. Because he was really sad that we were there. So
interesting.
Yeah.
Huh. Interesting.
The family stays close.
That's really interesting. I mean, that's so important, So that's nice.
Yeah. I mean, my husband wasn't brought up like that, really. Their family's kind of all over the place, and they have his nuclear family, which is close, but then the rest are all kind of far flung, and he doesn't have a lot of contact with them. So he's been adopted by our family. Who's
that's nice. I like that.
You can't get away from us, even if you want to.
That's really nice. I like that. All right. So I have to ask you 2 questions. Obviously the IP question, but I also wanted to ask you about your women's rights or human rights quilt. Can you tell us a little bit about that one?
Sure. So I made that quilt for the Women's March, the first Women's March in Oakland, California, because that's where I was living. And it was just after the election, and I knew I had to make something because quilting for me has always been, until now that I'm trying to make it into my livelihood, but before that it was just my source of comfort. Mm-hmm. And I was just really upset after the last election, like most of the country, half the country at least. Half, and so I just started sewing it and made it and wore it like kind of as a cape.
Really? Oh, that's great. I love it.
There's a picture of me on my blog of me kind of wearing it in the streets of Oakland.
I love it.
It was great. And then I had friends who helped me carry it and we kind of sat at the end and held it up. And then I went home and put it in my washing machine, actually, because it was covered in mud and rain. And the next day, Mama Sew had posted it on their Facebook group. And so I'm like, I woke up and I'm like, why do I have like 100 notifications about something? And so I looked, and there was just all of a sudden this huge post, and she had posted it, and then I think got like the notorious thing of got on a plane. Yeah. And by the time she got off the plane, there was already the trolls had taken over the Facebook post. And so I was getting death threats, and there was crazy. And
are you serious?
I'm serious.
You got death threats over your quilt?
Yes. And so by that night, my husband and I were both panicking in my house, like, what are we going to do? We tried to lock down all of our internet accounts and, take off our address off of everything. And it was just this insane.
That's totally insane.
Yeah, so it was crazy. But at the same time, people were seeing my quilt and loving it and reposting it and all this stuff. And I was like, oh my gosh. And then somebody called me, a famous quilter, didn't call me, but she sent me a message on Facebook and was like, I love this quilt. Can I make one? And I said, hold on a second. Let me think about this for a minute.
Right. You got death threats, and now people also want it.
Right.
That's totally insane. I think I would have freaked out, hugely.
We were totally freaking out. We were in full bunker mode. My husband is he's a web developer, so he's internet security guy. Yeah. And he was like, we got to lock the doors and close the window.
Right. No. I mean, yeah, right?
But it is unnerving. I've never been a target of that kind of
No.
of internet attention, and it was unnerving. I mean,
I totally get it. That would be terrifying.
So the quilt, it means so much to me right now, and I'm so glad that I made it, and I'm so glad that it's reached so many people. And I ended up making a pattern.
Yeah. So what happened to the pattern, and how did you go about making the pattern?
Yeah, so I'm a graphic designer from advertising world. So I just drew it up. I didn't measure anything when I was making it, so I had to go back and make another few and remember how I did it, and just I mean, it's really simple. It's just half square triangles and some applique. So
right. So you're just doing a bunch of half square triangles and then the applique. And did you include the applique, the words in the pattern?
Right, because it's not like a groundbreaking pattern. Anybody could really copy it, but I didn't want. My issue was then I was thinking of copyright, and this is my quilt, and I don't want somebody just out there, this famous designer who I know is going to try and make a pattern and make money off of it. Like, why should I do that?
Right.
If I knew her, if it was a certain thing, if we had an agreement, then it would be okay probably. But it just felt icky to me that then suddenly people were trying to capitalize on my idea. Yeah. And so, like, I want to capitalize on my own idea. This is capitalism, damn it.
Right. Totally. Capitalism, man. Right.
So I just, I did it in like 3 days. I wrote the pattern. A friend of mine, Allison, who was in the East Bay Modern Quilters, was a technical editor. She used to work for C&T Publishing. So
cool.
She is amazing. She does technical editing, freelance now, Allison Schmidt. I think that's her last name. I have to look. I'll send you her information, but she's amazing. Cool.
Awesome.
So she tech edited it for me in like a day, and we got it up, and I offered it as a PDF download. And I figured out how to do that, deliver it as a PDF. And
so how did you do that? That's really interesting. Did you find?
Yeah, so Shopify has a platform where you can sell things and you can deliver them as a PDF. So if somebody clicks on my website and buys it, then they just get an instant download link.
That's really great.
Yeah, it was really seamless.
Yeah.
I did end up printing off about 10 copies, and I brought them to Stone Mountain Daughter, which is my local fabric store in Berkeley, was my local fabric store. And they sold some for me, and they had like a little trunk show of my quilts at the same time. So it was kind of my little flash in the pan.
That's really great. I love it. Well, that's really cool. So
then
cool.
Laura McDowell Hopper saw it and added it into her exhibit at the Quilts and Human Rights at the Pick Museum of Anthropology. So for the last year, it was hanging in that exhibit.
That's so cool. That's amazing, right?
You know, I'm just like a little quilter who makes stuff for my wall and my own bed, and to have this happen and I was literally crying when I'm seeing my quilt hanging next to Sean Kimber's work.
Oh my God, right? Sean, because her stuff is incredible, right?
It is.
I feel like it's she's like our best quilter right now, right? And like I can imagine and her stuff is so powerful, but this is really cool, and I imagine when you see it in person, it's got to be powerful as well because it's huge, right? It's 80 by 60. Your quilt, yeah.
Oh, it's big. Yeah,
it's big. It's really cool.
Bigger than people think, I think.
Yeah, I love it.
It fits me. I made it so that it would be as tall as me. I made a cape, basically.
You made a cape. We should totally make quilt capes. That would be great. Oh my gosh, it's very cool. Now, what did you do in terms of the copyright? Did you put a copyright notice on it at all?
So I didn't register anything, but I did put that little all rights reserved.
Copyright Darci Sews.
Yep.
2017.
Yep.
Yeah, that's good.
That's what I did, and I think that's okay from what I've researched.
Totally. And then have you seen other people's versions of it?
Yeah, sometimes people will send me it, which has been super awesome, and got this little tiny fan group.
Totally. Love
but
it.
But it's so cool to see what other people have done and to see how much they love it, and it's just really cool to see something that's done and that they're loving it too, because that's what quilting should be to me. It's not it's not something that needs to be secret or kept away or anything. I think everybody should be able to make something that they love.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. Now, on in terms of copyright, any other copyright questions that you have or issues that have come up? And then I want to ask you about the long arm and IP.
Just with this business, like trying to find the name and figuring out, like how to do that was difficult. Because I think ideally I wouldn't like to have the quilting after it, because I'd like the studio to be a space where we can learn all kinds of sewing.
Right.
So in my signage and that kind of thing, I'm just using Field Trip.
Field Trip, interesting.
Online, if somebody goes to fieldtrip.com, it's not.
Right. Very interesting. Well, cool. And then in terms of the long arm, and you're doing it free motion, and you're just making your own patterns, do you feel like there's any restrictions or anything on what you long arm, or do you feel like that's just a technique, and whether it's a flower or something else, that they shouldn't be...
Well, I'd like to meet the people that I'm long arming for if they're a stranger.
Yeah.
You can usually tell from if it's somebody online or within the modern quilting community, I can kind of tell and suss it out online if they're going to like what I'm doing or not.
Yeah.
But it's here, the style in Minnesota is very different than other styles of the country. I think there's like quilting styles that are regional.
Really? You do?
Yeah. Definitely. After being a quilter in New York and Minneapolis, and then
Do you think there's regional quilting styles?
I think so.
How
my
interesting.
mother-in-law is in the South, and she's in northern Florida.
Uh-huh.
And the style down there is completely different from this. I mean, the East Bay Modern Quilters is like no other that I've seen. And then in Minnesota, you've got these like incredibly embellished applique pieces that come out, and you're like, oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Where does this time come from? And it's very precise and perfect. And
it's really interesting.
And things are, and in New York, it was, I was a very new quilter back then, but it just seemed a little bit more functional almost.
Yeah. Interesting.
Maybe, I'm sure there's some similarities.
Yeah, no, but that's interesting that would make sense that like different styles, and we see that with the quilting shops, right? So that there's different kind of styles of things, that there's still kind of regional individuality in some way, which is really interesting. Interesting.
Well, it really made me think about it when I was part of the East Bay Modern Quilters, because I'm just going to, they all think I'm crazy for talking about it. But I just think it was such a unique group and such a special time when I was there. And I'm sure everybody feels differently and has their own experiences. But it was like I was comparing it with my husband, who's also an artist too, about kind of like the Bauhaus movement, where you've got this group of people who are all working together and
so interesting,
feeding off of each other, and you get this work that comes out of it. Then it's got its own flavor, right? And I think there's a lot of groups in California that are similar to that. There's kind of this undercurrent, whereas here, if you tell somebody that you're gonna make a quilt and you're just gonna improv it, they're gonna think you're insane.
It's really interesting.
They think, they don't know where to start. They're afraid of the curves, or and it's not because it's just because they haven't been exposed to it. And the style of quilting here is to get your pattern and to follow it and make your points really precise and make sure you're, and then if you're good enough, you'll write a pattern and you'll be the one teaching the pattern, that kind of stuff. So it's just different.
Yeah.
Both have their virtues. You wouldn't have improv quilting if you didn't have pattern-based quilting, because there has to be a rule to break before you.
So interesting.
When I was in school and in college, I studied music and jazz improvisation specifically. So
really,
yeah.
So does that influence? Imagine that really does influence your quilting.
Absolutely influences it. So I don't play much anymore of anything. I think I'm going to try and take an accordion class.
That's so weird. That's cool.
I know. I've always loved the accordion anyway. I play the piano. So I thought, well, this is something that I could do. But since I stopped playing music, the quilting has really taken over in that sense of letting my creative outlet be kind of improvisational and wild and free again. So it's been really, it's brought all that stuff back for me, which I thought would happen maybe as a creative in an advertising agency, but as it turns out, that's not a very creative place. So
that's really interesting.
So yeah.
That's very cool. Well, I would love for you, if you think about it, I would love to connect to the East Bay Modern Quilters. It would be fun to interview them. I keep we've done like Hello Quilt. Like we have like little bits that we can always like somehow like you that kind of connect to them, but we haven't done a podcast on them. And I think that it would be really interesting to chat with them. I think it'd be really great.
Well, Stacy and Kristen, who are on from Hello Stitch, are like the queen bees.
Oh, they are? Oh, I'll have to go back.
I won't ever tell you that.
No, that's so ridiculous. I have to email them and be like, hey, we got to do it again. That would be really interesting, because I think that would be interesting to see sort of what role they play in this world that we're in. It would be really interesting.
And there's, when I was leaving, there was talk of them joining the East Bay Heritage Quilters. So it'd be interesting to see how that shook down and what was happening after that. Because we had a show there. We put on this month-long quilt show that basically Stacy put on, called Stitch Modern every year.
Yeah.
And we came into issues with insurance and that kind of stuff with the space we were using. So there was a couple incidents at the last show, and so we knew that the show had grown enough to warrant something bigger. We didn't know how to do it, so there was a couple avenues we were exploring, and then I moved away. So
really interesting. Yeah. Right. And it's connected to Maria Schell and Sarah Trail and like all these people that are like so key in like what's happening right now. It's really remarkable. Yeah,
there's really something special that is happening there, and I think, it's something to explore.
Yeah, totally.
I'm gonna have to go for a visit. I'm trying to get one of the girls to come and teach here at the studio, Tara Fawn, and she's amazing, modern quilter, and so we're working out having like a spring event at my studio in Minneapolis, because she won't come in the winter.
That's really interesting. No, well, who would? That would just be silly. Like, why would you go there in the winter? Like, it's craziness. But, well, this has been, like, so insanely great. Let's keep chatting.
Well, it's such good therapy. I just call quilting my therapy right
Totally.
now.
I totally agree.
I'm a therapist.
I agree. There's something weird about, like, I don't know why. I don't feel that way about other things, but there's something about it that's kind of immersive, and your problems go away for a little while, or just feel not as horrific or something. Yeah. So, cool. Awesome. Well, thank you for letting me take a little bit of your time, because I know with a little one, there's not a lot of time in the world, and I appreciate it. Do you want to review this before we post it, or are you cool with having it posted?
I'm cool with whatever.
Awesome.
I've lived through death threats from a quilt. So
I can't believe that. That's totally insane. Totally insane. So I'll tell you a quick story about death threats. So we were... So we had to build this stupid thing for my kids' school, and it was like for this, I don't know, some Spirit Week thing, and it was like a TNT Western, like you push it down and like confetti was supposed to come out. Yeah. And so we were like, sure, we'll try to build that. No idea how. Well, the teacher the night before emails us by email and says, do you have the bomb ready?
Oh, God.
And like we're like freaking out. They're like, bring it to school tomorrow at 10. And like my dad is freaking, he lives with us. He's freaking out. We're freaking out. We're like, we think like somebody's going to come knocking on our door, or like, so then we're like, we're not building it. And the kid's like, we have to build it. So we bring it in pieces to the school, because we figure like it doesn't look like a bomb if we like, and it's not a bomb. It's just a TNT like fake box with confetti. But oh my God, the level of chaos in our house of like, we knew somebody was going to be coming into our door, and like, because they were going to like, you said bomb and school in the same sentence, but it didn't happen. But we needed your husband at that time, because we really did feel like, oh my God, this is horrible. There was a lot of it was a lot of chaos. So we didn't actually get death threats, which I can't even imagine. Terrifying, beyond terrifying. But we believed that we were going to be arrested at our kids' school when we got there.
But yes, oh my gosh, that's terrible.
Yes, I don't know why a teacher would put that Is the bomb ready? No, the bomb is not ready. It's not a bomb. Like, it's a box. It's just like a box we painted.
Gosh, terrible.
That was really bad. So yeah, but not death threats. Wow. You are amazing. And I think it's really cool. Your quilt is super cool, and I can't wait to play more with you. So as we start to talk about that and I post something about it, will you just say sign up and chat, and let's think through sort of how we can be helpful? It would be super cool.
I'll let it kind of marinate over the
holidays. Think about it. Like, think about like what would make it better? How is it better? How can we make your life better? And how can you make other people's lives better? That would be the without being too emotionally taxing. So
yeah,
cool.
All right. Great.
Awesome. All right, fabulous. Well, thanks again for chatting. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
All right, take care. Bye. So you've been listening to Just Wanna Quilt, a research podcast coming out of Tulane University Law School. And I'm Elizabeth Townsend Gard. If you like this podcast, keep listening. Also, we have a Facebook group. Come join us. We talk about a lot of things. We also have an Instagram account. And of course, most importantly, I really hope you get a chance to quilt today.